do this. Oh, this is so fun. Here we go. We'll get there. All right, so we're gonna go. There we go. Does everybody see the screen? Good, thumbs up. All right, good. Okay, so yeah, I'm Dr. Mary Rensel. I'm here with Allie Hively, and you heard our intro. We're just honored. I just love seeing the names come up, where everybody's from, and to see your roles in this world. So thank you for sharing your time with us. We're going to talk about the why, which to me, I love digging into the science and the deep, what can we do today to build our resiliency toolkit. And Allie's going to jump on later and tell us actually how can we do it when we're busy and we're caring for people either professionally or in the home. So let's build our burnout defense program together. So as you heard, I'm here because, I had a grandma, actually two grandmas with Alzheimer's disease. I care for people daily with, an immunologic disease that can affect their brain functions. So I talk about brain function all day long in my daily job. And I love to share resources with folks who are at all challenged by mental health, neurologic disorders. I want to bring you, though, to kind of in my world, how I see things as I also treat teenagers with neuroimmunologic diseases such as multiple sclerosis. And I had a young woman, and she's a teen, and she was getting worked up for multiple sclerosis. And she came to see me with her dad. Her mom was away on a business trip. And we were really worried. She was, her multiple sclerosis was active. We had to get her into the hospital. So I just pick up the phone, I call, and within, that person makes some calls, and within, an hour and a half, she's laying in a bed in the hospital, ready to be, diagnosed and cared for. And I want to contrast that with, a teenager that I love that was suffering with, mental health disorders. And he, was depressed and suicidal. And we called a friend, and they say, you have to go to the emergency room. And there's maybe one place that can admit this child and this teen. And we get there, and then we wait, and he has to be frisked by the police. And, he happened to be visiting from out of town. So his parents were somewhere else. And, then he got interviewed over the phone about how he was feeling over and over. And there wasn't necessarily a bed. Maybe there was a bed the next day. So I just look at these two situations, when a teen is suffering with what is considered a medical or a neurologic disorder, I can make calls and get them in the bed. And when a teen is suffering with a mental health, mood disorder, suicidality, there's so many barriers to getting him to comfortable, supportive care to the experts that he needs. So I'm here because I want to see that different. I feel like the status quo right now is not okay. I'm just so honored to be with all the caregivers in all your different roles, because I know there's a lot of work to be done, but I also know as a caregiver that we have to care for ourselves, and then keep ourselves strong and, do everything we can. And we're going to walk you through a lot of things that we can do throughout the day to keep ourselves, fortified as a caregiver. So Allie, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself a bit.
Yes, absolutely. So we partnered because what we really realized is people are needing both, right? We need the science and the understanding of why this matters so much, because in this busy wellness industry, it can often become noise that we need to do this and we need to do that and we need to do this. And when it comes to caregivers, of course, you're taking care of so many things that extend out beyond what we have capacity for oftentimes. And so Mary and I really wanted to bring together both of those things, which are what matters most when you don't have a lot of time and when you're busy and when you're so extended and overextended. And then also, how do we make it happen? Because we often hear what we should do, and then it can be overwhelming and confusing. So how do we boil that down? And then how do we get some actual action steps, which is what your handout is going to be, that we'll get to by the end. But we really want you to leave with an action plan. So as a life coach, I like to help you break it down to your life, and how are you going to take one step forward or two steps forward or improve that 1% that you can then start to compound over time, because that's really what matters. It's not that we just tell you what to do, it's that you leave with an action plan to take that next step. So this partnership is so important to me because we have both. And then being here, like Mary said, I'm just so grateful because I mean, caregivers are just giving so much to this world. And so we'd love to be able to give you an opportunity to focus on yourself right here.
Thank you. Okay. So one thing about me is I love gardening. I love gardens, and I love when I visit a new town or something, I love to go to the botanical garden in that town. So I look at this picture and it makes me think of brain resiliency, because the other thing you might want to know about me is I relate everything to the brain. That is my bias. I love, seeing everything through neuroscience lenses. So when I look at this, I think of, the gardener, the landscape architecture. Somebody had an idea of what they wanted in this space, and then they had to assess the light and the shade and the weather and, their own skill level. Did they need to bring consultants in to figure this out? And where did they want people walking through, and how could that be safe? So somebody put a lot of, probably likely a team, put a lot of time and energy into designing this. So I want us to think about our brain resiliency the same way. We have an ideal. We want to be very intentional about our ideal, but a lot of times it takes a team to build it, to build the ideas, to get the education, figure out what we need, what are the components of what we need, and then how can we put it together? How can we make it happen and make, a beautiful garden like this? Our brain resiliency can be fun and beautiful and bright and colorful. And then how do we maintain it? Because that's the other thing about a garden. It can look like this one day and the next day it can look quite different. So I want this picture to bring us into the reality that we can have big ideas, but we need to take a team, break it down into steps. What's our goal? And then work our way through this. And that's what we'll do together. Allie,
So today we really want you to leave with this understanding that, which I'm sure you already do in a lot of capacities, that resiliency is a learned behavior. So it's like yoga, where you practice it and you get better at it, or mindfulness, or all of these things, right? So that's of course important, and I'm sure many of you know that, but we want to remind you of that. And of course that you already know most likely that it is so important to adapting to change. And as caregivers, things are always changing, right? One day things are going well, the next day they're not. Then you're back to like status quo. So it's that up and down roller coaster that resilience is so important, so that you can stay on that roller coaster. You can ride up and down, and you can do your best to kind of keep it as steady as possible. Then we want you to leave first understanding the resiliency plan that we're going to provide, and then also having the support to know where you are right now and actually creating that plan. Like we said, whenever we do workshops, we want you to leave with a plan instead of like, okay, well, now I have an hour's worth of work to take what they told me and actually think about myself and integrate it. We want you to walk away today with that already in mind. So let's dive in.
Awesome. So we know that even before COVID, some years ago, being a caregiver it can be a burden. It can be a joy. It can be, just something that's deep in your heart, and that this is super important to you. But it can be a burden. It can influence what we're able to do day to day, obviously, and it can also influence our own health as caregivers. But the good news is, a lot of the research has shown that our social support, the network that we keep around us, if you want to think of like a hammock of support, our social support can mediate our burdens as caregivers. And then stress can be very powerful, and there's actually good stress and bad stress, negative stress, positive stress. And the negative stress is this thing that can keep us, the literature shows, can keep 1 million workers out of work that day. So sometimes even stress itself can keep us from being able to do what we want to do throughout the day. So we're going to really dig into this and just think about where things are today, and then how to make that plan to make that beautiful, bright, joyful garden. So what is the reality today? Well, today, brain disease is what, the American Brain Foundation would call a formidable foe. It's a challenge, right? So we know, I'm sure if you could think of 10 people, so many of them would be affected by mood disorders these days because of the stress of COVID and caregiving. 55 million Americans are affected by some sort of brain disease. That comes down to 1 in 6 of our family members, our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors. I have 4 children, so I'm a family of 6. So that data, that stat really hits me. You know, that's concerning. And I want to do all that I can to support others with actionable tools today. And this fight, it can feel overwhelming. I'm wondering if you're comfortable putting in the chat, what is a brain disease that worries you the most or something that challenges you today? And also anything you want to put in the chat if you have a question so far. I'm glad to take a little break here and answer any questions. I can't see the chat. But Allie, if there's anything going on.
Yeah, I can also. Sorry, Allie, would you prefer to do it or would you like me to do it?
Sure, I'm happy to. No, that's great. Yes, dementia, bipolar disorder, dementia, for fogginess from depression, autism, depression, dementia, depression, Alzheimer's, OCD, Alzheimer's, dementia, a lot of dementia.
Yeah.
Depression.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 1 in 6, that the stat is really quite concerning. I mean, why are we going to talk about resiliency? Why do we choose resiliency to focus on today? I mean, the great news, the very positive news is resiliency is a learned skill. Like Allie had said, it's something like if you're trying to learn yoga, you can go to a yoga class, you can watch videos on how to do yoga. Same thing with resiliency. We can learn how to be more resilient. We're not stuck. It's not like a brick, like this is our resiliency level. We can build it more like a garden. We can water it and fertilize it, and it can grow over time. So that's the beautiful news. And that's it's in opposition to something like, let's say, a personality. We may have a certain personality trait where we approach something in a certain way because of our personality trait. And there may be a range of personality traits, but that's how we are. But resiliency can be built, just like that beautiful garden. So what is resiliency? How would we even define it? I like to think maybe a beanbag. If you sat in the beanbag, the space you might leave, if the beanbag can then bounce back, so it's the capability of a strained body to recover its size and shape after deformation or something deformed it by compressive states. This is what the dictionary describes it to. It's the ability to recover or adjust easily to misfortune or change. The great news is the brain has a natural ability to be plastic. The term plastic means change or adapt. It has the ability to be resilient. That's how it's made. We know that. We see clear signs of that. Let's say a baby trying to walk, learning to walk. One day it's just kind of getting up a little bit, it's crawling, it's holding onto the table, it's holding onto a toy, holding onto a hand, and within weeks or a month, it's walking, right? And so we know the brain can learn. We know the brain has the ability to connect the nerves a little bit easier, has the ability to send out more what we call neurotransmitters. So one nerve can talk more easily to the other nerve. So the brain has this ability to redesign, to restructure according to its goals. And it can respond to challenges. That's the beautiful news. So we are not a brick. The brain is not a brick. It has the ability to change, to grow, to alter, to redesign, to adjust. And every time we learn something new, our brain is a little different. So I'm so hoping that after this amazing conference that you've attended, literally your brain is different when you leave this conference because it has sprouted new neurons, sent out some new neurotransmitters according to the information you're trying to remember. Maybe you're envisioning things that helps us remember things. And also today we're going to work on an action plan. What can you do today? So why does that even matter? We're challenged, right? We talked about the data with brain disease is challenging. COVID has extra layer of challenge. We're challenged in the work setting. We haven't even discussed, burnout at work and the levels of what's happening at work. But we have to adjust. We have to maneuver. We have to navigate many challenges, both at work and at home. So we have this capability and we can build it. It's the capacity to recover quickly through these difficulties, a toughness, if you want to say. And building that can help us then succeed. It can empower us to help us maneuver these recurring uncertainties. Because if there's one thing that's certain in life is it will change. There will be something new that we have to address. And that is a known. We know that for sure. That's a given. So again, the brain has this plasticity. The term plastic, we think of it like a plastic toy or something, but the term plasticity really means that it can bend and change. And the brain has that. That's its natural capabilities. So what can resiliency do for us? It can it can boost our quality of life. So what does that mean? You know, what our life feels like, how our days feel like, how empowered do we feel navigating our days? How good do we feel throughout our days? It can also help boost our positive emotional state. Most days we're vacillating between negative and positive, negative and positive. If you're mostly in a negative, that's when you want to bring on a professional and get some help. But if you're vacillating, you know, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, there are things we can do to stay more in the positive emotional state, to feel that actual peace of mind, to feel relaxed, to feel certain we know our next steps. It helps us handle change. It helps us handle those daily burdens, those things we have to go through each day. It helps us to feel supported. I'm going to go over some research with you in a bit, but when we feel supported, we actually have, you know, improved kind of brain chemicals. So how we feel, how we see things is really important. So in neurology, we have a saying called time is brain. So a little quiz for you. Let's put this in the chat. What age do you think is like the prime age to start being concerned about your brain? There's a lot of pictures here, but which one do you think is best?
50.
What age?
I'm going to read them for you.
Okay, thanks.
So first guess, 50, 70, 30 at birth, 40s, 55, prenatal, before birth, early, 5, prenatal,
I love it.
55,
I love it.
65, childhood, infant, a lot of all over the board from 70 to prenatal. I think
I want to tell you, I love it. Well, you're all right. You know, so today's the day, you know, today's the day at every age is the time to be concerned about the brain. I have to tell you, I had a big aha moment. I was working on a project with some gynecologists, OB gynecologists, and we wrote a paper together. And I was like, okay, I didn't realize that OBs are kind of, you know, OB docs, baby doctors. They're the ones that can have the most influence on the brain throughout the whole life cycle. So everybody's right that even prenatal, you know, as the brain is forming, that's the time that the environment is influencing the brain, the mental health state of the mom, you know, the things, the environment they live in, the air quality, the water quality, the nutritional state. So many things are influencing how the brain is developing. And then exactly like people had said, young children, as they go through school, the brain is sprouting and developing, and even the brain is trimming actually sometimes because it has a lot of connections, but it kind of trims like what are the most efficient connections. And then over time, we're going to talk about more ways we can influence the brain through all the life cycles. So all of these pictures are correct. We want to influence, and we, you know, I guess we need the prenatal image here. But yeah, so, you know, you're all right. Every day matters. Time is brain. We use this phrase, time is brain, according to stroke risk factors. So if somebody thinks they're having a stroke, you think you're seeing your family member have a stroke, you bring them right to the emergency room because time is brain. So we want to always be caring for the brain, and strokes are related to blood flow to the brain. But we've learned that there's so many other mediators of brain health and wellness that we're going to jump into. So this term epigenetics is exactly what we're talking about, that there's things that we can modify throughout our lives. This term has been around since the 1950s. It's getting a lot of press lately. What it refers to is that we have genes. We'll think of the genes as like a pen, like the image of the pen there, that they're fixed. You know, we have the genes that we got them from our parents, and those are fixed. But actually epigenetics, it means that sometimes we can do things to modify what the genes create. So we can modify how much protein they make, what kind of proteins they make, if that gene is active or not. So even if we have genetic risks for something, we don't all look the same, right? We don't all. So like, for example, I treat multiple sclerosis. Even identical twins with the same gene, they have about a 70% risk of the disease, the identical twin. So the environment can influence what the genes make. So that's why I have a pencil. So there are things that we can do each day to modify and to influence our future. And that term is called epigenetics. So we see the word gene in there, and epi, like on top of the gene. What can we do to influence the outcome of the genes? So I like to think about the brain as the soul, as the base of our purpose. The brain, your unique gifts, it helps you to bring your natural gifts and strengths to this world. And we need a lot of things in this world, like we've talked about, some very concerning data. We need people living in their highest abilities, right? With all their gifts and strengths shining. So how can we do that? I heard a great TED Talk recently about how do you find your purpose? Like, what would you say your purpose is? But a great way to do that is to think about how people feel after you work with them. So let's say Christy, who set this whole thing up, and her team. How do we feel after we attend something like this? You know, we feel grateful, we feel connected, we feel empowered, we feel informed. So if someone said to Christy, "Hey, Christy, what do you do?" Well, I support people, I inform people, you know, so that if we go back to how people feel after they work with us, that might be an easy way for you to find what your purpose is. So as a neurologist, I like to inform and support people and connect them to resources and, you know, help them know that I'm there for them throughout this journey. So you might want to take a little minute here and think about, write down on your sheet, how do people feel after they work with you? What would you say? If anyone wants to share and put it in the chat, I think that would all help us to think of things that we can think about our own purpose, because sometimes we don't see it as, you know, as with our perception, but I think sometimes our friends or colleagues can say, hey, you know what, that person said this or that about you. They felt really so empowered, or the person that you're caring for feels really grateful that you're giving your time and energy towards supporting them. Are there any comments in the chat about how do people feel after they work with you?
Hopeful is a great word. My intention for them is to feel empowered, capable, and worthy, accepted, a good listener. Yeah, I mean, those are all amazing. Hopeful, empowered, entertained. Ooh, I love that. And educated, caring, which is huge. Loved.
Amazing. I love it. So thank you for sharing that. I know that's personal, so I appreciate that. I will say that, you know, what we can do each day to modify our brain, how well it is. Again, so my bias is talking about neuroscience. I love to think of the brain as an organ and what we can do each day to support it. And when it is fully supported and it's living in its best state that it can, it makes us who we are, gives us our essence. It can also, if we learn how to build our resiliency toolkit, it can influence how we perceive things, how we look around and what we see. It can influence how connected we feel to our environment, to our community, to our family. And of course, it can influence our resiliency. And that's why we're sharing our toolkit with you. So what can we do to even increase our resiliency? I know you're busy or all have a lot going on. So what can we actually do? So when I was digging through the literature, I don't know, I like to read medical literature. I like to read business literature about this. I like to read neuropsych literature about it. I like to read psychology. I like to read AI. I just like ideas. I like innovation. That's just what I enjoy doing. So when I look around, I after, you know, family members struggling, you know, people at work, I think, what can we do to put this together? Is there some way to simplify this? Because there's really great stuff going on in research. And there's a lot of things that are clarified. I don't know that they get down to everybody to know, like, okay, this is how you can put it into your lives. So I like to take the research that's out there has a high level of certainty, and then what can we do today to use what we know today? Now, there's always new medical literature coming in, which is wonderful. But right now, the literature suggests that if we're busy in these three buckets, these three spaces, we'll say connection, emotions, lifestyle. This is where we put our foundational energy. This is where we decisively say, this is where I'm going to put my energy. People become more resilient. When caregivers are more resilient, the people they care for do better. So as a neurologist, this is important to me. I want to make sure that I'm doing the best for myself so I can bring that to the people I care for. I want to do that for my family. So to me, this is important to look around the data and see where the foundational activities should be. So let's talk about connections. I'm going to go back to my notes because I don't want to miss anything. Okay. Connections. So we've heard, and maybe you've heard in the literature, that loneliness is as impactful in our health as, smoking, even maybe more so. So when people are lonely, they have very negative health outcomes, including dying earlier. So building our connections and enhancing our connections and being very intentional about this is really important, meaning for how long we live even. This is what the literature suggests. Our social connections can be protective. So why do we want to build that hammock of support, that network? If you want to think of a spider web of people that I like the idea of a hammock because hammocks are comfy and cozy and usually fun. If I'm on a hammock, I usually am just relaxing. It's not like I'm doing any kind of work on a hammock. So a hammock for me has a good connotation. So we want to build that support of connection. I'll tell you, during COVID, I was for a while just virtual, only working from home. And I missed the people at work. I missed just saying hi. Like, we have somebody that stays in the front lobby and helps our patients who come in on rollators or wheelchairs and helps their family members. It helps direct them around our big campus. I just missed saying hi to him. I missed him. So even just, just a quick little interactions, they're really important for our health, our wellness, our well-being. So we really need to honor this. And again, when people were assessed, I'm going to go back to that perceived support. How supported we feel is important for even the health of our genes. So there's something called a telomere, which is, it could be short or long. It starts long, but with age and stress, it can get shorter. And it was a little bit shorter in people who didn't think they had the support. So sometimes we need to look around. Who are the people in our lives that are actually supportive? And if we're missing some because somebody moved or somebody's busy, somebody has a new job, we need to keep building those connections, because it will indeed be like almost like a savings account for us, because it will be that protective hammock for us if anything does go wrong, or if we're challenged or we are looking for resources. Also, if people felt that there was some cohesion or some connection in their communities, they saw less obesity in kids. So sometimes our lifestyle actions or our outcomes, meaning, how medically, how we're feeling, and what diseases might be present, are related to how connected we feel in our communities. So there's many things that are linked to the power of connection. So the other thing to know is that if there's hearing loss, that will then make our connections with others more difficult. And that hearing loss or a lack of or lowered hearing abilities has been associated with increased risk of a kind of dementia called vascular dementia. So these are things we want to be intentional about. If we know somebody, we have a loved one with hearing loss, we want to keep reminding them, this is really important, because if you're not connected to others, the brain is less active. And that seems like in the long run, that's a negative, that can lead to negative outcomes for a brain, especially increasing the risk of dementia. So there was a big article by the Lancet, which is a very well-respected medical journal, and they listed 13 things that were positive or negative for long-term brain health over the years, and the risk of dementia and hearing loss was on that. And so we need to just honor what really helps to support the brain over time. So lifestyle, what are we referring to when we say lifestyle? Is what do we put in our life, in our days? How do we fashion our days? What actions are in our days? How do we style our days? And that could be, sleep, movement, how much water you drink, your nutrition. And again, how do you interact with others? So one thing to know is the brain kind of sits between our ears in a skull, and it is kind of stuck there. So it depends on us to give it some good nutrition, right? It also is very dependent on really healthy blood flow. So I like to think of our big blood vessels and our medium-sized blood vessels as garden hose. We started this talk about that beautiful image of the garden. And when, the garden hose is old, if anyone are gardeners here, if your garden hose is old, it gets cracked, sometimes it leaks. Blood vessels can be something similar. They can get stiff and they can be less pliant. And that is not a good state for blood vessels. We like our blood vessels very elastic and moving, and again, kind of resilient, able to adapt to our blood pressure and our pulse. So what can help that? All the things that we hear about that help the heart can help the brain. So movement, healthy nutrition, good sleep, seeing your primary doctor regularly so you can prevent the diseases that can affect the heart, because they matter for the brain too. So that would be high blood pressure, cholesterol, et cetera. So we have to be careful with that, and just make sure we're seeing our primary care doctor regularly. It's always better to be preventive, but if some of those conditions are there, we need to also treat them, because the blood flow is really important going up to the brain. Speaking of brain blood flow, now's a good time to do a little march under your desk or a little stretch, because as we sit still for a while, there will be less blood flow to the brain. So about 30 minutes in of sitting, there's less blood flow to the brain. That has been seen in some studies where they looked with ultrasounds on how much blood was getting up to the brain. So just know the brain, again, is sitting up there dependent on you, right? And it's very busy. It's doing a lot of things. I feel like it's like a busy parent, right? So it's managing your heart, your gut, your balance, your thoughts, your memory, your vision. So it's very busy. So we need to give it some really great nutrition throughout the day. It's on 24/7, right? So we need to give it a lot of support. So a little march, a little stretch now is just fine. And then there's also toxins or negative things, especially that will affect the blood flow to the brain, or can actually be toxic, or toxin. It can be a toxin to the nerves themselves and the cells that support the brain. So those are alcohol, excessive alcohol, and tobacco, nicotine, vaping, any kind of smoking, because that hurts the blood flow to the brain. So there are some toxins. There's a long list. This is not exhaustive, but we want to be careful that we're putting more good than bad into the brain. It depends on us, right? And this little guy here, so sometimes you do too much. You try to do too much. So we have to be careful. We just pace ourselves, right? We don't want to try to take all this in and be a new person tomorrow. We want to just pace ourselves and do a little bit at a time, so we're not overwhelmed by like this little guy. Okay.
Wait, let's take a sec real quick and see if there are
Okay.
any questions about those two, because I feel like we covered a lot of research. And we did have a comment about someone's husband who has vascular dementia, so she was appreciative of that information.
Okay.
So yeah, any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or any comments so far. I'm happy to read them to Mary, as I know she cannot see them right now. I purchased a cubic that sits under my desk to keep the circulation, and that's great to know that it's actually helping my brain flow also.
Yeah, they'll stretch,
that movement.
they'll move. Mm-hmm.
What is a cubic? Ooh, would you like to unmute yourself and tell us what a cubic is? I'm assuming it's like is it the pedals? Like pedaling? Yeah.
Yes, it's the little pedal bike.
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's great.
Relieves.
So it keeps you.
Also.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
It is great. And they're not very expensive, which is wonderful. And you could use them for your arms too. You could bring them up on the table, use them for the arms. And they're well made. I mean, there's a few different companies that make them. But yeah, they're great for offices.
It does work.
Easy to bring it into work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's under my desk.
Yeah, agree. I have one too. Yeah.
That's awesome. Two questions. How do you test for vascular dementia? And then another question was, recently I read there no amount of alcohol is recommended. Did you read this?
Yeah, so the literature sometimes is conflicting on alcohol. If you listen to the Mediterranean diet, it'll say, some alcohol, like 1 drink a day for women or 2 for men. And so, yeah, it's hard to keep up with the medical literature, because there are sometimes conflicting results, or that's always changing in new results. So yeah, it is known to be a toxin. I mean, what it looks like when somebody's drunk, if they're falling over, and what the police do to test somebody to see if they're drunk. Those are neurologic tests, touch your nose and walk in a straight line. So we know alcohol affects the brain. If you've heard someone with slurred speech, balance, if anyone's been drunk, spinning, so it affects the brain. We know that it's toxic to the brain at higher levels. The CDC has recommended that has defined excessive alcohol for women as more than 1 drink a day. And then for men, it's more than 2 drinks. And then in the week, I don't know, we have to look that up. I don't want to misquote, but I think it's like 5 drinks a week or something is excessive for women. So women is less so than men. I would just, like moderation is important for anything. But yeah, I would talk to your primary care doctor. If the question about how to diagnose this, I would talk to your primary care doctor. Sometimes people are referred to a neurologist. There are kinds of neurologists that specialize in evaluating people for dementia. So that's probably the kind of neurologist you'd want to get to if needed.
Perfect. Yes, Amazon for the cubic.
Yeah.
Someone wondered where to get one, so that's
Yeah.
great. And then there's an article linked in here that we can take a look at later, but I just clicked on it. It looks, yeah, like Mary's answer kind of covers that same thing, and it obviously depends how you act under the influence of alcohol, which is what.
Yeah.
article
And then,
was.
a lot of times, right. So people sometimes will have a family history of addiction. So it depends on you and your medical conditions. If you have diabetes, that's a different story. So I would ask your primary doctor what their recommendation is. Yeah, but and check. There's big national organizations that will make recommendations like the CDC, et cetera. So those are good places too. The American Academy of Neurology has informational websites about brain health and what should be done at each stage of life. So that's the American Academy of Neurology is another good resource.
Great. All right, let's keep going.
Good. Okay, so emotional assessment is our third bucket of where we should be really active. I learned a lot about this during COVID. I'm not a psychologist, I'm a neurologist. So I know we have some mental health experts on the call. I'm sure they could add a lot to this. But the more I read, I like efficiency too. So I want to do what's needed, but I don't want to do extra. So I want to do what's really needed. So what I've learned is that emotional assessment is really important. It's a good place to start. Again, if you find yourself mostly in negative emotions, please get a professional in your life, like a counselor or psychologist. But there are some ways where you can emotionally assess. What does that mean? So that means like, maybe just writing 3 feelings you're having 3 times a day, just kind of see what is your balance, where are your emotions throughout the day. And doing that, you might see, oh, you know what, I have more negative emotions throughout the day as the day gets longer, because I'm tired and I'm hungry. And that goes back again to that brain, kind of building a hammock of support for our brain. Brain is an organ that's busy all day long, all night long. So if you're tired or more negative emotions towards the end of the day, it could be that you need to talk to like primary care doc about your nutrition. Some people need to eat more nutrition that lasts longer throughout the day. And Allie will talk to us about that too, like good protein and things. Sometimes we're just not taking in nutrition that helps us last throughout the whole day. And it makes us feel exhausted. So emotional assessment, just knowing what they are. We're not saying to fix them or cure them or change them. But the literature suggests that if we suppress the emotions, that can increase our heart rate and our pulse rate. And that can be negative for our vascular health, like our heart health and our brain health. So we don't want to just suppress. We want to learn how to just know what our emotional state is throughout the day. And once we know, we can actually do something called priming. We can say, hey, okay, this time of day is a hard time. I'm going to brain prime. I'm going to do extra care for my brain a couple hours before, so I'm ready for this situation. So once we have some information, then it'll help us with our action plan. If we know our emotional setting, it can also help us with emotional regulation. And there are lifestyle actions that can help us with our emotional regulation. So let's say you see someone at a meeting, a family dinner, and they're flying off the handle and they're just short fused and they're just responding to everyone, and they seem out of sorts. They're not their normal self, so you can say kind of what's going on. Again, you kind of go back maybe upstream, like what's happening? Did you eat well today? Did you sleep? Is there a new stress? Like what's happening? The brain needs more support when it goes through tough times, when it's learning something. So hopefully today you got a lot of good nutrition, because if you're asking your brain to learn today, I hope that you gave it a really great breakfast. So we want to make sure we're doing we want to say common sense, but sometimes it just gets off our radar, that we have to kind of brain prime before we learn, brain prime before a heavy emotional time, or brain prime before stressful events. The holidays are coming. We see new people. We're with family, maybe more than we usually are. So how do we prime for that? What can we do? Kind of go upstream, take care of ourselves build that hammock of support. Well, these spheres are where I'll be active through the holidays, to get good support. When there are mood disorders present, when there's distress, when there's negative stress, sometimes the neurochemical balance there is negative, puts us in a negative emotional state. Well, there's things that we can do to kind of help ourselves get into more positive emotional states, or at least be aware of what's going on. And again, get professionals for help if it just seems to be just overwhelming. Okay, well, I'm going to stop there. Allie's going to take charge, and thank you for your attention. Well, I'll be here throughout, but I'm just going to turn it over to Allie.
Switch gears. Actually, you know what? Let's unshare you and reshare me.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, good.
I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, yes.
Yeah, you stop sharing and I
Okay.
will start sharing.
Good.
Let's see. Find our screen. Yes, tons of great info, which is going to lead us right into the next piece. Talking about what to do with all this, right? Like you said, you've heard some of it before. Hopefully you're learning a lot of new things, and about the specifics, which I think is the most fascinating part, right? Now that Mary's broken down like what these things are that matter most. And we're happy to talk even further about that. Let me get my slideshow up. Does that work? Is that working? Okay, great. Oh yes, now I can see faces and I cannot see chat. Okay, perfect. So what we want to move on to now is switching gears to take all of the stuff that we just have been thinking about when it comes to these three spheres. And I do want to tell you that we very intentionally created this plan to be CLE because we are from Cleveland, and we do think that it's super simple to remember that you need to be active in these three spheres. So if you keep in mind the CLE, where this organization is from, where we're from, then it's something really simple to kind of create a habit around, and that's what we're going to talk about. So in this toolkit, you have the CLE, and that's how we're going to create this plan based on that, so that you're able to be active in all of these spheres. Because one of the things that, like Mary said, it isn't enough to just be active in one. So we have to figure out how we can be active in all of them. So if you know someone who like always turns to exercise and they're stressed, they always turn to exercise, which is a positive, great habit, but they're not dealing with any of their emotions. Maybe they're not really connected. They might not pay attention to their nutrition or their stress. Then that one thing isn't going to be enough to really build the resiliency that they're going to need and that we're going to want. So I think that this is really important to recognize that we want to be active in all three, and that's what this CLE is for. So good news is there is more in control than you think. And if you take this little circle and you think about like kind of like that, the dowels that fit inside each other, right? So in the smallest dowel, if you open them all up to the bottom one, actually, let's start with the biggest dowel. Within the biggest dowel, it's like all of the things in the world, right? All of the things. And think of that biggest dowel as like the things that are out of your control. Someone else's health is actually, you know what? No, let's put that in the second one. The weather is out of your control. Major political situations are out of your control. Yes, you can vote, but as far as like the way things are, you don't have so much control over these big things, right? Traffic is often out of your control. These are things that you have to just take a deep breath and do what you can. So if you open that dial up, this is the next dial is the next dial of the three is going to be the trickiest. This is the dial that's full, or the circle that's full of things that you can influence, but you don't actually have control over. And I will say that's probably where the person and the people that you caregive, that's where they live. You have an influence over the ability to care for them, but you don't have complete control, right? You have an influence over your children, over your friends, over the people that you spend time with. You don't have complete control. You have an influence over your schedule, your calendar, your busyness, but there's some things that you have to do that you don't have complete control over. So let's get down to what you do have complete control over, and that's what we're going to focus on right here. And there are quite a few things. What goes in your mouth, you have control over. The way that you take care of your brain and build resiliency, you have control over. The thoughts that you think, you have control over. And then a lot of these actions and behaviors, as long as we break them down small enough to fit into your life, then you do have more control over them than it feels. So sometimes when we get into that overwhelmed place of thinking of all this stuff that Mary just shared, or of thinking of how am I going to take care of myself when I have all these things, It's like we need to open up those dials and get down to the bottom one of like, what do you have control over? And that's what we want you to leave here with. So I want you to think about this intentional plan. As we use the garden analogy, this did not just get thrown together, right? If someone is building this beautiful English garden, then they did it with a lot of intention, they did it with a lot of care, they did it with a plan that they then followed. They didn't just totally wing it. And this is something to really remember when it comes to taking care of yourself. If we wait and we just wing it, there's no way that we would come up with this end result. There's no way that we're going to come up with the strength and the ability to use all the tools in our toolkit. We can't just wing it. We need that plan. So that's what we're going to do. How are we going to do this? When we know that you're busy, we know that you have all these obstacles and all these factors working against you, and we're in the same position, right? Juggling all of these things. So the first thing we want you to do is think about awareness. This is such an underutilized skill, and it's something that we're going to bring into practice right now. But when you just take a deep breath and you bring in the energy of awareness, then you can automatically start to see, oh my gosh, okay, two things. Our brain may tend to help us notice the negative, like this is not working and this is not going well and this is not going well. And a lot of that has to do with the way that you see the world and your perception. But what I also want you to do is bring in the awareness of like, what is going well? What is going well? And how can we do just a little bit more of what is going well? And we're so quick to think that we should, we need to, we didn't do enough. We're hard on ourselves, right? So how can we use awareness as a positive? How can we use awareness to notice, okay, there are a couple of things that are really not going well that I want to put some time and energy into, but actually this is going well. This is going well. This is going well. And as we do this next exercise, I really want you to bring in this energy of awareness without judgment. Because when you notice something and then you immediately judge yourself, it's almost like one step forward, two steps back, right? So as you start to notice throughout this next activity, I want you to just let go of all the judgments, let go of the shoulds. They're heavy, they're not productive, and they're not going to help you move forward. So keep that in mind. Then we're going to take this plan and we're going to think, how can I make this more automatic? How can I build some habits out of this? If the habit is just every day you wake up and think, okay, CLE, CLE is the habit, and you put it in your phone and you just start to become more aware of it, that's one step forward, right? And then we're going to get on to more of the nitty gritty. And then the other thing is the self-love. And we're going to talk again a little bit more about this, but this is really how to take this toolkit and make it happen in your life, is that you have to apply self-love. If you're doing this from a place of frustration, from a place of self-hate, from a place of not good enough, it's just not going to be sustainable. And so just taking that deep breath to be like, you are at a caregiver summit right here. You are showing up for yourself and all those people that you have this positive ripple effect for. You are doing so much good in the world and just giving yourself that love and compassion in so many ways, because that's going to then help you to make it make sense. We know that caregivers have a tendency to put other people first, and that is one of your gifts, I'm sure, but it's also can be one of your weaknesses when you realize that like you're giving. And so bringing in that energy of self-love and recognizing how important this plan is, because when you follow this plan, you are then able to take care of people with more ease, with more love, with more patience, with more peace. And that's, of course, going to have a more positive impact. And everyone here is looking for a positive impact, or they wouldn't be in the caregiving business, right? Or in the business of taking care of someone. So we just want to give you all, put your hand on your heart, just take a second to bring in that self-love for yourself and that appreciation for yourself, and use that energy to formulate this plan, not because you're not doing enough, not because, you know, there aren't things that you can improve. So, all right, let's make it happen. So take a second, and we've switched gears from the research, which is so important because, like I said, this world is noisy. And when Mary boils it down to like, these are the things that really matter, then we can say, okay, I have a plan. Like, I know what matters. I know where to put my time and energy and attention. But the first or the second question on here, and we've started to touch on this, is like, what makes you you? What are your gifts and qualities that we need you to have and to shine? And so if maybe since Mary asked this question earlier, you've thought of some more things. I want you to take a second to jot them down. If you're like, oh, you know what? I haven't thought about this enough. I haven't thought about how I am this unique flower, which is the analogy that we're using. And I haven't thought about what makes me me and how you are one beautiful piece of this garden that we need to bloom and flourish. Otherwise, you know, the garden is not gonna be there. So just take a second to really recognize like some of your best qualities and how much the world needs them. And so this whole workshop is about you taking care of you so that you can continue to give those things. I want you to also take a second to think about, as we move into this plan, that so much of our day, almost half of our day, is spent on autopilot. We wake up, we do the same routine, we think the same thoughts, we go to the, probably get the same coffee mug, get the coffee, sit in the same spot. We do so many things on autopilot. And that can be an amazing, amazing, amazing thing that we want to use to our advantage. But when we recognize, okay, this is an amazing thing I have on autopilot, and this is something that I don't really want to keep going on autopilot, whether it is the thoughts, whether it is the just like lack of awareness, whether it is, you know, the fact that you have the same obstacles, excuses that you keep running up against. Like there is this autopilot that can be used to our superpower. And so during this workshop, I want you to think about that and then beyond. What am I doing on repeat? Because you know the saying, like, if you do something the same, then you're going to have the same result, right? So if you're in that place where you're like, I want to build my resilience, I have all these new tools, but then you go about doing things the exact same way, then you're going to have the same results. You want to switch to autopilot and make it work for you. How can I just make some tweaks and make this autopilot serve me better, get me better results, build my resiliency, right? So just keeping this in mind, I think, is really important, and recognizing like, what could I do just a teeny bit different that could give me a teeny bit different result. So take a second on your paper, whether you have this printed out or you just have a notebook paper. If you can, grab one, please. I want you to go through, and I want you, we're going to do this together, but I want you to rate yourself. Again, not from a place of judgment, just from a place of awareness. But where are you right now? If we don't know where we're starting and we're going from Ohio to California, but we don't know that we're in Ohio, then like we could be doing this, we could be all over the place, and there's 100 different ways to get there that are not going to make sense because we're trying to go west, right? So we need to know where we're starting from in order to build this plan. It's just like taking a trip. You have to know the destination to put in so that you know if it's 1,000 miles away or 100 miles away. And that's what this is going to do. It's going to help you to see what things are going well and where you can put your time, energy, and attention, and what things you need support on. So right now, on a scale of 1 through 10, we're going to use connection in general. So where would you rate yourself? 1 being like, you know, I'm pretty isolated, I'm pretty lonely, I don't feel very connected to my environment, I don't feel very connected to things. 10 being like, I got this down. I'm at book club, I'm involved in church, I have a great support at work, I have a neighbor community, I'm involved with my family, I'm learning a new skill, maybe pickleball, maybe whatever it is. So thinking about that, give yourself a rating 1 through 10. Again, no judgment is allowed in this space. Okay, then I want you to go on to lifestyle. Oops. So lifestyle is a little bit loaded. I don't want to say a little bit. It's very loaded. Lifestyle is very loaded. There are some things that you may be doing really well. So you can overall think about your lifestyle and just think like, overall, how healthy am I eating? Am I eating proteins with all my meals? Am I eating 3 to 5 fistfuls of veggies throughout the day? Am I eating healthy fats, which are hugely important for our brain health? So think avocado and nuts and oils and, you know, fish that are rich in fat. Are you eating these things in nutrition? Are you exercising? Mary, do you want to share that study about the amount of exercise? Because I find that to be so important. I think there's so many extremes when it comes to exercise, like, well, how much is enough? What's the right amount? And So it can be like, okay, are you exercising in general? And then we can take it a step further to like, are you meeting the requirement that's going to satisfy this plan and really support your brain health? Because we're not focused on body composition in this moment. We're focused on resiliency. So what is that, Mary?
So yeah, I mean, there's been a bunch, right? And so the nice thing is there's a Scandinavian study looking at 40 years when we're talking about especially vascular dementia, 40 years of women in middle age, how active they were. If they were moderately active and how active they were throughout those decades, it could potentially decrease the risk of vascular dementia by 90%. So it was really impactful. And then there's also was a study through MIT saying that we had to be at least, pretty moderately active for 30 minutes to release some of those chemicals that are called BDNF and things that would support like nerve health themselves, how easily the nerves work and how they release chemicals. So a sustained moderate where you kind of get your heart rate up a bit, at least 30 minutes. And the recommendation from the MIT researcher was 5 days a week. But so sometimes we break down, like under the desk, little pedaling, we do little actions, but it does seem to be important to have at least a sustained 30-minute time of some movement. And the range of the assessment people have been putting in is like anywhere 2 to 8. So we're just seeing a range. So some people's it's their positive, some people it's their opportunity zone. So we're seeing a nice range.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think that's helpful to know because then you can start to think like, okay, if this is what is proven to be supportive and helpful, then this could be like the ultimate goal. And based on where you are, you can say like, well, right now I'm doing none. So 2 would be better than none, which we can get into the plan of this. But also if you're doing 4, could you up it to 5 and feel like you're really checking that box that meets that need, right? So lifestyle is so loaded because exercise has we could talk for hours on that. We could do a summit on fitting exercise into our life, right? And then nutrition is that same piece. But when it comes to giving yourself an overall rating, this lifestyle also includes sleep. So there we go. Like I said, you can have multiple ratings. So if you want to rate yourself for sleep, rate yourself for nutrition, rate yourself for exercise, that's going to help you with the plan that we're moving to next. And if you want to lump it all together. We also wrote on here medical measures. So this would be, do you go to your primary care doctor once a year and do you check in with that physical, because that is just as important. And so if you do, give yourself a 10. If you have that as an opportunity, then that could be something to go on your list. Then I want you to think about your emotional assessment, your emotional well-being, as we say. And when it comes to that, this is again a loaded thing. All of these are, but that's why we're breaking it down so clearly. So on a scale of 1 through 10, when you're thinking about your emotions, are you, I want to say over a 5 is a positive state most of the time. Are you doing some of these behaviors? You're managing stress. You have a plan. You are, managing your emotions. You're checking in with yourself. If you have the mental health and mood disorders, then you're getting support for those from a physician and from someone else. So recognize that. And then we could take it a step further to like, do you journal? Do you meditate? Do you visualize? And again, this could be an opportunity that goes on your plan for like, okay, how can I bring that in? So when it comes to each of these, there are so many opportunities because of course, this is talking about your relationships, your lifestyle, and your emotional health. But again, we want to break it down. So I want to give you the next couple minutes to do that. When you go to the next part, the second page of your handout, you're going to see there's 3 columns. And this slide right here, I'm sure has brought up a lot of things in your mind, like, oh my gosh, oh yeah, I am doing that. Oh yeah, I am doing that. Oh my gosh, no, that spoke to me. And now that we've been talking at you for a long time, it's an opportunity that we want you to take your pen to paper and really write some things down. So the first, I don't know why, oh, there we go. So in this first box, or if you just have a piece of blank paper, we want you to write down like, what is the opportunity or what is the plan that you can make for connection? Knowing that you need to be active in all of these things, and also knowing that you're very busy and we don't just want to say, oh, yep, do this for an hour a day and this for an hour. That's not realistic. So what is the one step that you could take in each of these things? And I encourage you to break it down to one step. So if you feel like overall you're pretty connected, but you know what, you could make one extra phone call. You know what, you've been thinking about going to a book club or showing up at your neighborhood volunteering event. You know what, maybe you could schedule that for next month. So where can you move the needle one space for each of these. The next one is lifestyle. Like we just said, there's probably a lot of room for improvement. If you take a second, and I'm going to give you 3 minutes, if you take a second and you really think like, okay, what do I know I need? I know I need to move a little bit more. I know I need to focus on my nutrition. I know I could add a few more vegetables to my meals. What is the one space that you can move just a little bit forward in lifestyle? And then emotions. Like we said, could it be that you're adding those check-ins at the meal times? I saw that someone said that they were doing that. That's amazing. That's when you're using and building a habit. It's like you're triggered by the fact you're eating a meal, triggered not in a negative way, like, oh, I'm eating a meal, now is the time. So it's like you're pairing the emotional awareness with the meal time, and you're always going to eat a meal. So you're always going to remember to do that. It's like when I brush my teeth, I think a positive thought. So you're pairing that together. So right now, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to take a deep breath and do some writing on your own. Feel free to write as much as you'd like as far as small action steps. And then this is then going to be that plan that you move forward with. So feel free to put anything in the chat that you'd like to share on this, and then Mary can read a few of these things that kind of came up for you. If you're not done with this, then I encourage you to put on the rest of a classical song and kind of get back into thinking about yourself and all of this. But Mary, anything you want to share?
Yeah. So yeah, people have said they have different ideas they've shared. So somebody makes a video and then kind of processes it that way, like what happened and what the circumstances were, and they're caring for 2 family members. So that works for them, how they feel and why and what the circumstances were. Somebody like that, we just asked them for one thing in each box because that helped them to focus, and they appreciated that. That felt good to just think of one thing.
Doable.
Yeah, very doable. Somebody has a plan to meet friends for coffee or tea once a month. Somebody likes to, diary or to write down, kind of their thoughts about things. Someone has a plan to meditate at bedtime so that they're not distracted. Sometimes it's hard for people to block out all the incoming noise. They're thinking maybe if they set a specific time and they could block all that out, like, text and everything that comes in, that they're trying to figure out a way to kind of block out some of the barriers for them focusing and working on and thinking about their emotions. Yoga snacks, that's cute. So someone does yoga snacks, so just a little bit of yoga whenever they can fit it in. That's a cute
That
way.
is cute. I
Yeah.
love that phrase.
Yeah.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
so
And the point of this is to be so personal. Like it should be so personal. Like we don't
Mhm.
want to say, and I think this is one thing in the wellness world that's like, well, you should do yoga. It's like some people get stressed out by doing yoga. So yes, it's a practice you can build, but you're tuning into you and you're picking that one thing that's going to help that you can start to activate. Because as soon as you get the one going, then you can feel like, oh, feel that success in this and feel that validation and then decide, could I do a little more? Do I want to? Is this feeling good? Do I feel that I'm more resilient and able to hold up to things, right? So I want you to also then think about what you wrote down. And I'm sure this is besides just that one or two things that you've written down, I'm sure this has kind of got your wheels turning on all that you could do, all that you quote unquote should do, need to do, want to do, however you want to think about that. But really then notice like there's two approaches to bringing this into your life. There's one that is like what I say, the low hanging fruit. And there's one that's like this big bang, right? So if you're someone who is extremely, depleted right now, and you want to bring some tools into your toolkit, you want to start acting on this, then it might be really beneficial for you to take a hold of some low hanging fruit. And things like low hanging fruit are water, right? Like if you have a straw water bottle, then you don't have a lot of excuses or reasons why you can't start to build the habit of water. It doesn't take a lot of extra time. If you're working, you can be drinking. If you're in the car driving, you can still be drinking if you have a straw. I always encourage people to get a straw water bottle because then you don't need two hands. You're less likely to spill it. It's way more ease. It's a very simple thing, but I actually think it makes a huge difference when it comes to doing it because yes, I see a straw cup coming right across, right? Because you're able to then you do it while you make it happen. So things that could be low hanging fruit that are things that are not going to take a ton of time, right? Some of those connection pieces, calling someone on the way home from your commute could be low hanging fruit. It doesn't take you extra time. You're driving already. Instead of kind of sitting in your own mind, you reach out and connect someone. Adding a vegetable to each meal. This could be low hanging fruit. It doesn't like change every single thing about your diet. You don't have to go in, do something completely different, but you're also bringing that in, putting in the emotions each day. It could be low hanging fruit. Again, it doesn't take a ton of time. The other option is like, you know what? I need to make a change. Like I had this realization, I want this big bang effect and I'm going to make a change. I'm realizing that I'm drinking 5 Diet Cokes a day and like, I need to stop that. It's going to help me if I cut that. Or I'm realizing, and when I say that, I just am thinking like from a nutrition standpoint, right? You recognize that you're watching Netflix for 2 hours every single night, and that is really not serving you. It's negatively impacting your sleep, and you're going to cut it. And it's going to have this like bigger, more challenging, but also possibly a more drastic improvement feeling, right? Or maybe you're like, no, you know what? I need to get back to calling my personal trainer or finding whatever it is. It's something that's more drastic, and it also has potentially like a faster result. So notice where you are in your life. Neither of these things is wrong. And there's different points and times and different moments in your life where you really need to grab a hold of that low hanging fruit and just make those small incremental changes that feel gentle and feel doable. And there's times in your life that you're like, okay, this is a wake up call. I need something big and I'm going to like take this action. Again, neither of them are wrong, but just recognize what you need right now as you're moving forward with putting this plan and using these tools from this toolkit. So this is the magic secret sauce. And the magic secret sauce, okay. The magic secret sauce is self-compassion, it's self-love, it's grace, it's mindset, it's an understanding that you have so much on your plate. This is not a place to be harder on yourself. This is an add value. This is something that is nurturing to you. And so when you go to start to implement these things, when it is next week and there's maybe been a crisis, a big crisis or a small crisis, and you're spread even more thin and you're drained, this is not the time to be like, oh, Allie and Mary said I had to do all this stuff. This is the time to be like, okay, how can I bring in more grace? How can I shift my mindset to notice one thing that I can do, that I can use, that's going to help my resilience, that I can pull through? How can I just take one teeny piece? And this is going to be the trick to continuing to implement this, focusing on the CLE again and again and again, is this magic secret sauce? Is this grace? Is this understanding? Is this, ditching of the all or nothing mindset? This is what I find my clients really, really, really get themselves into a lower place with, is like, okay, here's the plan. There's like 100,000 things to do, and I need to do them all. And if I don't do them all, then it's not working. If that's the message you leave with, we need to come over and talk to you, because the message we want you to leave with is that every little thing is adding to this resiliency plan, and that it is so important that you don't have that all or nothing mindset. And I love the analogy of, like, if you were thinking in that way, you ran a red light in the morning, you're distracted, you're busy. Then for the rest of the day, do you run red lights? No, you just get it back together and you stop at the next stop sign, you stop at the next red light. So if you have this plan and you have all this good intention and something happens, you don't say like, whoop, I'm just gonna, disregard the whole plan. You say like, okay, the next opportunity, I'm just gonna take one step forward with the grace, with self-love, with compassion. So remember, that really is the magic secret sauce, because without it, it's just not sustainable. It doesn't feel good. And then we have to work harder with our brain to get ourselves on board with doing it. So we want to make it feel as possible and as easy as we can. So if you're in a garden, you're going to have rabbits or deer or some type of obstacle that's going to prevent you from having everything go exactly as you want. And what we know is that you're going to have obstacles, right? So take a second and get them all out. Share in the chat your obstacles. Some of them are going to be so obvious: your job, the people that you care for, the diseases that you're working with, the time, stress, your own mindset, your old habits. I mean, you can add to this, but we all as human beings struggle with these similar obstacles. They're of course not the same, but the thing is, we want to take the power away from them. And so I want you to just put them in the chat real quick. We don't even have to read through them. You can read through them and notice that I guarantee if you have an obstacle, someone else in this group has had the same obstacle. And when Mary, we're definitely welcome to read through them, whatever feels best. But put these obstacles out there, because when they happen, when you have this plan and you have this great intention and you're going to take the one step in all the little spaces, and the obstacle comes up, you can say, of course this happened. Of course this happened. I knew this was going to happen. And that's okay. I'm not going to let this derail me. I'm going to either show up the next day. I'm going to break this down in half. I'm going to take just a different alternative. I was going to do this, but here's an opportunity for me to build resiliency and make a little sidestep and do something just a little bit different. So noticing that you have obstacles, we all have obstacles. We are not, blind to the fact that this plan can be great on paper and then the thing is going to come up. So it's just about managing our expectations. Like, of course there's going to be an obstacle. So how am I going to be resilient and move through it and stay focused on caring for myself, stay focused on taking care of me, stay focused on doing these things that matter, right? So I'm not, do you want to share any, or do you feel like we've got that covered? I want to give it time for questions.
I'm going to share a few because I think they're pretty powerful, and I do think we learn from each other and once we acknowledge them. So overwhelm, tired, fear of disapproval from others, not feeling like you're not appreciated, like you're taken for granted, interruptions, strong habits that are hard to change, energy, fatigue, time management, disconnecting, attitude, just not feeling like you're appreciated. So it's hard to kind of get the positive attitudes going. Yeah. Preparing.
So good. So powerful.
Yeah. So many challenges. Yeah.
And when you are in any of those places, whether it's internal, like an attitude for yourself about like, this is hard, an energy of just like, I don't have any energy, or a mood of like, I don't really feel like doing this, then it's like, bring yourself back to everything Mary said at the beginning, bring yourself back to that purpose, bring yourself back to the understanding of these gifts. And of course, the negatives, which we don't even like to focus on, but just bring yourself back to that bigger picture and then see if there's 1% that you can do, one step forward that you could do when it comes to some of these obstacles, and recognize they're going to happen. Up. I knew they were going to show up, and have that plan. What am I going to do when I don't feel like doing it? What am I going to do when somebody needs me? What am I going to do if I skip a day? Like, I'm going to do it the next day. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do it. I'm going to call someone. I'm going to have an accountability partner. I'm going to have a little plan that then helps you to take the action. All right. So support. This is amazing because you guys have so much support with this organization, and also this opportunity to just kind of connect for a second on who is support in my life, right? Of course, you have this community that you can turn to and that you can come to and that you can be a part of. But then also in your world, like, who are the people that are going to lift you up? Who are the people that are going to support you in what you're doing here? Not the people that you're going to call that are either going to add fuel to that fire or just kind of be in that low energy with you. And I think this is something when it comes to the connection piece, like Mary said, there's a study that, has to do with the people that you're connected with. And are they people that are lifting you? Are they people that are dragging you down? And of course, the people that you're caring for may not have a control over that. So how can you put in some more people in your life that can help lift you as support system in all of this? Okay, this is on our worksheet. We're almost done. We have second to the last. This is what you might need to let go of. And on this worksheet, we gave you a permission slip. So you fill out your name. So Allie's permission slip to let go of what? And this could be something external in your life. This could be like, you know what? I need to let go of the neighborhood bake sale chair or the commitment that I just can't do anymore, right? This could be something external that you need to give yourself permission to let go of, because you matter more than something probably that is taking a little bit of your time or energy. Of course, there's things you cannot let go of. The other thing you may need to let go of is a piece or an energy of a mindset. So it could be that, like, you need to let go of the guilt. You need to let go of shame. You need to let go of being so hard on yourself. You need to let go of perfectionism. Like, there isn't just one right way to do it. How can you let go of perfectionism, right? You need to let go of something. So whatever kind of speaks to you, put it in here. And this is something that I love to encourage people to do on a daily basis. If you're looking for a journal prompt, what can I let go of today? I don't need to carry it today. I can let go of some of this worry. I can let go of some of this guilt. And you can pick it back up tomorrow. I mean, I don't recommend it, but as you practice letting go of some of this heaviness that you carry, then all of a sudden you can build the habit of learning how to let it go. Worry will always be there for you. You can always pick it back up. You can always pick up some of these things, but how can you get in the habit of letting go of some of the things from a physical, logistical time standpoint, from a physical environment? Like, how can I let go of some things that are just holding me down? And then also, I mean, physical, like in your home, like clutter and things like that. And then from a mental perspective, how can I let go of some of those things? So there's a couple ways to think of it. None of them are wrong. And whatever feels like the thing that's speaking to you is going to help you to focus on this, because this matters so, so, so much. You matter so, so, so much. And that's what we really want to remind you. Okay, so the last section of the worksheet, which I'm going to let you do on your own, but it's really breaking down. So you already broke down the one thing that you want to do. And then this is actually taking it even one step further to, like, what do you need to do to make it happen? So if you said exercise, what do you need to do? Do you have the right shoes? Do you need new shoes? Do you need to sign up for a class at the gym? Do you have to, like, call your friend who you'd walk with? Do you, like, if you said exercise, do you have, a TV downstairs that you can turn on YouTube? What is the one little baby step that's going to help make the thing happen, right? And that's what this bottom box is for. So it's actually the breaking down of, like, okay, if I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, what do I need to do? If I said I'm going to, improve my nutrition, then maybe the one step is that you're going to order from Instacart today and you're going to fill your cart with veggies, or you're going to run through the store and you're going to try 2 new things that you didn't try before that, are going to be helpful and beneficial. So it's like taking that one thing you're going to do and the actual specific step that's going to make it easier in your life. And I do want to give us time to have any questions. And so I think we've covered a lot of this. I hope that this is helpful. We really want you to know that you are so priceless, your time is priceless, your brain is priceless, and that this toolkit is going to be the research-based toolkit that you should follow of like, okay, how can I be active in the CLE, in the CLE, in the CLE? And recognize that when you do, and celebrate that when you do, you are doing something so hugely important. I think the celebration piece is one thing that we didn't touch on enough, but how can you bring the energy of like, look at me, I just ate a vegetable. Look at me, I just took a walk. Look at me, I rode my bike under my desk. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Even just to yourself, to build that habit of recognizing when you are doing these things. So we want to thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to jump off here in case anyone has questions or comments or anything that.
Thank you so much, the two of you, for, I love the combo of the science and the action plan. I mean, beautiful. So I'm going to add the assessment here. Please fill that out. I'm also going to reshare the handout in just a second, but there was a question someone chatted me that I wanted to make sure we got to. So Allie and Mary, I wonder if you could speak on this. What do you suggest to stop worrying about future events and ruminating about the past?
Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, okay, good. Yes, okay, so worry is the focus, and it's worry about the future and worry about the past. Ruminating about the
past. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the best action steps I think is journaling, and I do use this as a solution for a lot of things, but honestly, and Mary can talk to what happens physically inside your head, but when you get things out on paper and they're not just swirling and swirling and swirling and swirling, then you can start to separate yourself from them and start to move forward from them. So one thing I would do is, if you're ruminating over something that's happened in the past, then I would brain dump everything that you're kind of going through in your mind. What are you thinking about? What negative thoughts, which might be a little scary, because just because you have negative thoughts doesn't mean you feel those things or you hate that person or whatever, but you're getting it out of your head and onto paper. And when you do that, you can then go through the action of ripping it up, shredding it, burning it, and recognizing like, I want to let this go. I want to stop ruminating on it. So this may take multiple journal entries, but actually just like whether you're recapping, if there's a person involved and you need to write them a letter that is like your true feelings, not the feelings you'd say out loud, but your true feelings, you're jotting it all down, then you're shredding it, you're ripping it up so that it's just moving out of your head and you can start to move forward from it. There's a lot of support, of course, that you can get if it's something traumatic. If that's the case, then you should definitely seek like professional help. But if it's something that you're just kind of going over and over again, that you're just like, oh my gosh, I need to stop thinking about this, then the journaling can be really helpful. The other thing you can do is like bring in that self-compassion in the journal. Like, I didn't know any better at the time, so I maybe didn't show up the way in my power that I wanted to. But that's huge. You can also use that for the future, where you can start to just dump out all of the worries, dump out all of the things that you're afraid may happen, and take away their power in your head in the moment. You can say like, okay, if I'm worried, I'm going to forget about what to worry about. I can look at it, but really that's not going to be the case. And what's probably happened to Mary can speak to is that it's almost like you're in a habit of worrying. And so it just kind of repeats a loop, and you want to change gears. You want to create a new habit that doesn't keep you in the same cycle. So yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You have to kind of retrain the brain. So if you always like, I always notice I worry at this time of the morning, then do something different. So actions will help our brain, our nerve kind of sprout. And I would just acknowledge that, yeah, the brain is an organ that will change. So our brain is not the same today as it was a week ago because we've learned some certain things or have new perceptions. So I would just honor the plasticity of the brain. It can change. And, you know, also be careful who you hang around with. I would say, I don't know that I talked about that enough, but we kind of take on the emotions of the people that we put around us. So that's contagious. So if you hang around people that worry a lot, I would just intentionally be careful about where you put yourself throughout the day. Shift a bit of that. Yeah. And then envision it looking differently. So the power of the brain, you'll lay down new neurochemicals if you envision like a play. Here's how I would like to see it. If that same thing happens again, here's how I'd like to see it today, because I know new things today. and just see it like a play, feel it, see the colors, who's there, and your brain will actually think that was pretty real.
That's great. Thank you
Mhm.
both. You're getting lots of wonderful kudos in the chat. I also wanted to add, Patrick said something that I thought could be helpful as well. Could you ask yourself some questions such as, how can I think of the situation in a more helpful way? What advice would I give to someone else struggling with this worry? So I want to say thank you both. We can hang on for just a minute. There are a few more questions. If you need to take a break now, please feel free. We will be starting again at 10:45 with preventing